Tennis balls were white for almost 100 years, not gray, not green, white. Wimbledon was played with white balls. The Davis Cup was played with white balls. Bjorn Borg won his first major with a white ball. Arthur Ashe, Billie Jean King, Rod Laver. Every legend of tennis before 1972 played with white balls. Then the International Tennis Federation made a single rule change that affected every court on Earth. Tennis balls would now be yellow. Specifically, Optic yellow, the same fluorescent greenish-yellow you see on every construction vest and highway safety sign. One British TV network, one camera test, that's the reason why. From 1874, when Major Walter Wingfield patented the modern version of tennis in an English country house, until 1972, tennis balls were white. They were made of solid vulcanized rubber, covered in white wool felt, and sometimes black when the white got scuffed. Every single photo you've ever seen of professional tennis before the 1970s features a white ball. Every newsreel, every Grand Slam trophy presentation. The ball was white because wool felt was naturally off-white when bleached, and white was just what a ball looked like. Nobody ever really thought about it much. The ball was always white, and it was always going to be white, and there was no reason at all to change anything. Then something started happening in the late 1960s. Colored television sets began showing up in British and American living rooms. Wimbledon was broadcast in color for the first time in 1967. The Australian Open followed. The US Open followed. Millions of people who had never watched tennis live were now watching it from their sofas, in color, on small cathode-ray tube screens. And almost immediately, a serious problem emerged. White tennis balls were hard to see on color TV. They washed out against the grass at Wimbledon. They disappeared into the backdrops of indoor arenas. And they blurred completely on fast serves. Broadcasters complained. The BBC, which had the biggest tennis audience in the world, started testing alternatives. In 1971, BBC engineers ran a test that changed the sport forever. They painted tennis balls different colors: red, orange, bright green, and a fluorescent yellow called Optic yellow. Then they filmed each color on a real grass court, a clay court, and an indoor hard court, using the TV cameras being used for actual broadcast. They studied the footage frame by frame. The fluorescent yellow beat every other color by a wide margin. It was visible against grass. It was visible against clay. It was visible under indoor lighting. And it stayed visible when the camera tracked a ball at over 100 miles per hour. The BBC sent the findings to the International Tennis Federation. In 1972, the International Tennis Federation made it official. Rule 3 of the Rules of Tennis was updated. Tennis balls in sanctioned competition could now be either white or yellow. Within 2 years, almost every professional tournament in the world had quietly switched to yellow. The United States Tennis Association, the largest tennis federation in the world, mandated yellow balls at every level of competitive play. Coaches switched. Equipment manufacturers switched. The retail market followed. If you walked into a sporting goods store in 1971, the tennis ball aisle was entirely white. If you walked in 5 years later, it was entirely yellow. An entire visual category of sports equipment had been reversed in 60 months. There was exactly one place that refused to switch: Wimbledon. The All England Lawn Tennis Club, which hosts the oldest tennis tournament in the world, decided the yellow ball was undignified. The Tradition Committee voted it down. Wimbledon continued to use white tennis balls on its grass courts for another 14 years. The BBC filmed the tournament every summer with the worst ball color for color TV, because the club cared more about tradition than visibility. This lasted until 1986. Finally, after years of broadcasters complaining that Wimbledon was the hardest tournament in the world to cover on television, the club caved. Yellow balls arrived at Wimbledon that June. A century of white ball tennis ended on center court. What the BBC's test actually identified was a specific color the paint industry calls optic yellow. It's not a natural color. It's a fluorescent greenish-yellow engineered by paint chemists in the mid-20th century, specifically to be as visible as possible to the human eye. The human retina has more photoreceptors tuned to this exact wavelength than any other. Optic yellow sits right in that sweet spot. Highway safety vests are this color. Fire truck paint is this color. Construction hard hats are this color. When engineers design a color to pop against any background, they reach for optic yellow. The ITF essentially mandated that every tennis ball on Earth be the color humans are physiologically built to see. There's a broader pattern at work here. Color television didn't just change tennis balls. It changed soccer balls from brown leather to black and white panels. It changed NBA basketballs from white to orange. It changed the uniforms of entire leagues, the colors of goal nets, the paint on every baseball field. Television is not a passive observer of sports. It is the customer the sports industry optimizes around. When the cameras can't see the ball clearly, the sport changes the ball. Not the cameras, not the viewers, the ball. Tennis is just the cleanest example. A color change affecting every court, every club, every recreational player, traceable to a BBC engineer with a test rig in 1971. Hit a tennis ball tomorrow. Watch it bounce once. Watch it skid off the baseline and race toward you. The color you're looking at isn't the color of the sport at all. It's the color of a 1971 BBC engineering test in a British television studio. For the first 100 years of professional tennis, the ball was white, because wool felt was naturally white, and nobody had ever seriously thought about it. Then color television showed up in family living rooms, and millions of ordinary people watching at home from their sofas couldn't reliably track the ball. And an engineer at a British TV network painted a dozen balls in different colors and filmed them under professional studio conditions on grass. The color that ultimately won was optic yellow, a fluorescent, greenish, high-visibility paint color that the human eye happens to be physiologically optimized to actually detect above any other. Within 5 years, every professional tournament in the world except Wimbledon had switched. 14 years after that, Wimbledon finally caved too. Every yellow tennis ball bouncing on every court on every continent today is the signature of a British broadcaster, a camera test, and a specific shade of paint that the construction industry also uses on highway safety vests. The sport itself didn't pick this color. Television did. So that's just one of them. There's a whole quiet archive of stories like this, hiding inside ordinary objects you never once thought to question. Subscribe so the next one finds you first.